Thank you all for joining us. And as you see, I'm joined by three incredible panelists. And so I want to take a minute to introduce myself and them, and then let them introduce their utilities so we all know who we're talking to. So as Rachel mentioned, I am a product consultant at AiDASH. I've been here for just about a year, and I partner with some of our customers to actually bring the solution to life. So after sales has done a great job, I come in and say, how do we solve your problems? How can I customize both our analysis, our approach, and even the actual interface of the web and mobile applications so that it suits your needs? And before that, I was a consultant at BCG where I did a lot of problem solving for really large companies, and I really enjoy tackling some of the hardest things that are out there. I get to work with actually all three of these panelists in my daily job. We meet weekly with them and their teams as we're going from, in some cases, pilot through multi-year deployment and expansions, and in other cases, clients who've been with us for a really long time, like National Grid. So here's a little bit about our panelists. So first, we have Orlando McKoy. So he is a director of T&D at the Jamaica Public Service Company. So he has a lot of experience in engineering and transformation, and so he brings all of that to JPSco, as we refer to them, when we're on friendly terms, which is always. And he will tell us today a bit more about the challenges that he faces. Next, we have Carl de Haan, who's come all the way from New Zealand at Powerco. He is a certified engineer, so he brings a really engineering approach and mindset to all of the challenges that they're facing down there. And we've actually just kicked off our multi-year deployment, so we've completed a pilot successfully together, and now we're in the phase of just scaling everything up across their quite a few different areas that we're going to be supporting them with, so that's really exciting. And finally, we've got Ryan Moe over at National Grid, and as you may have heard earlier from Abhishek, National Grid was our second customer, so we've actually been partnering with them for a long time, and they're the reason we've been able to develop a lot of the amazing features that many of you use today. And National Grid is a great partner in that sense, and so is Ryan. He has tons of experience in the utility space. He's really great at these operational excellence initiatives, and he's a key advocate for our success and for AiDASH and everything that we do. So we're looking forward to having you guys. And if I can ask Orlando first, could you tell us a little bit more about Jamaica Public Service Company and some of your goals in working with AiDASH?
Great, thanks Isabella. As mentioned before, I'm from Jamaica Public Service Company. Yay, Jamaica! I'm trying to convince the organizers to have the next Evolve in Jamaica. I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of support. Great guys. All right. That being aside, we're an island utility, so there's the sole distributor of power on the island. So we have generation, transmission, and distribution. So when we get hurricanes, we're kind of like on our own. So it's kind of a difficult position to be in. We have about 12,000 kilometers of distribution primary line and another 800 kilometers of transmission lines. We have about 700,000 customers. Our major problems for reliability are vegetation and equipment failure. So vegetation is probably the highest contributor. We do have challenges with our reliability. I won't say it's perfect. We do have lines that are extremely long. We have circuits that are over 500 kilometers, and we have several of those, and it runs through very difficult terrain. So we have a lot of hills and valley, and if you know Jamaica, you know it's a tropical environment. So we have very fast-growing species. We have bamboo to deal with, and I mean, from our knowledge, bamboo can grow as fast as 3 feet overnight. So I can go and cut a bamboo shoot, and then next week I'm back at the location to cut again. So we do have these type of challenges. Because of the challenge, about a year ago, we decided to look at a different approach. How is it that we could actually make a significant step change in how we manage our vegetation? So we started looking at best practices, and I see some colleagues here, Berth and Tiago, who would have helped us along the journey. And one of the roads of that journey kind of led us to AiDASH, where we started looking at the technology, not only the technology itself in terms of the satellite and the AI, but also the opportunity to manage all of our vegetation program through the assessment, the execution, and the monitoring. So that's it for me.
Thanks, Orlando. Thank you. Carl?
Well, before I tell you about Powerco, I would say New Zealand's a great place to visit. Fantastic tourist destination located in the Pacific Ring of Fire. It's not as scary as it sounds, promise you. We have no natural predators that will kill you, so it's quite safe. And really from New Zealand's perspective, we are quite lucky. We have what would be considered as like a clean energy system. So about 90% of our generation is renewable at the moment. And by 2035, we're working towards 95% of that. Compounding problem around that is the electricity growth with decarbonisation is skyrocketing at the moment. In times where we thought our demand would be quite flat, we're looking at doubling our current demand over the next 10 years, which presents interesting challenges to New Zealand as a whole. When it comes to Powerco, learning from Orlando, we're not too dissimilar. Powerco is one of 29 distributors, though. We are the largest in terms of network coverage or length, and second largest in terms of customers. We have about 900,000 customers that we supply. And really with AiDASH, what we're going on the journey with now is storytelling, because that's the one thing that we struggle with. In the utility and in my space, engineering background, black and white, telling the story of reliability, investments, trade-offs becomes very difficult without the right data. We have enormous amounts of information, but how do we package it together? And that's really what we're doing now with AiDASH.
Thank you, Carl. And for our sole U.S. utility representative on this panel, Ryan, tell us a little about National Grid.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Ryan Moe. National Grid is based out of the UK, but also here in the US. We have transmission and distribution lines throughout New York and New England. Specifically, I cover the distribution system in Massachusetts, and that's largely what I'll be talking about today. We have similar issues to other utilities, thinking specifically about climate change, but also invasive species, dealing with major storms and recovering from them. Yeah.
Great.
Thank you.
All right. So I hope that gives everyone a good idea of who we have on stage and the perspectives that they're going to bring to life in this next 30-ish minutes. We'll have some room for Q&A as well, so if you hear anything that's interesting or you want to learn more about some of these challenging situations being faced by some of our island friends, feel free to write those down. There will be time for those. So the first question I want to ask is for all three of you, and we can start from the back and work this way. And we've touched on it a little bit just in your intros, but what are some of the risks that you foresee or that you're already facing in your utility or your region that is, probably attributable to climate change? And Ryan, we'll start with you.
Sure. One of the first things that I think about is longer growing seasons. So climate change, warmer weather, the trees are going to continue to grow longer. When that happens, they tend to grow faster, longer, thinner limbs that can break more easily, also contributing to more outages. So we need to adapt to that. And does that mean we need greater clearances along our lines, which could be more difficult to obtain? Or do we need to prune more frequently? And historically in Massachusetts, we were on a fixed 5-year maintenance cycle for all of our distribution circuits. And now, over the last few years, since we've partnered with AiDASH and taken this condition-based approach, right now we're averaging about 5.5 years across the state. but that it is trending towards shorter cycles. When the very first analysis we ran, our system average was about 5.9 years. So now we're about 4 years in, and it's reduced to about 5.5 on average. And we've got circuits throughout the state. Some are being maintained after about 4 years. Some are going 6 or 7. So using IVMS and all of the data that goes along with it, it's helped us to adapt our system to climate, to respond to the issues presented by climate change and the changing growing seasons.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think you'll find this can be a little bit different from the challenges that are being faced by the other two, but all kind of related. And like I mentioned, we're always adapting and kind of figuring out what's going to bring the most value to you. Like you're mentioning, there's different approaches to where we might, what levers we might pull to actually keep the reliability up. So, Carl, what are your thoughts on what's upcoming?
So I think for us, the themes are consistent even from earlier discussions and chats this morning. I'm listening to exactly what we're going through, just on a slightly different scale or approaching it from a slightly different angle. So when we're talking about resilience and climate challenge, for us, it's how we face both supply and demand side issues. So even though we're a distributor, we're thinking about the customer on the other end. There's being predominantly hydro, we're having change in weather patterns, change in snowfall. So our winter seasons, we don't have enough snow. When summer comes along, reservoirs, lakes, rivers don't fill up like they should. Catchment areas changing, summer's getting longer. Rising sea levels, another one that we face. We've got quite a few coastal communities. Being an island, most of all the communities are coastal. And, we're getting longer, drier seasons, although you might debate with me if you're not from New Zealand, where it's changing every 15 minutes. But then we also, when we do get our rains and our storms and our cyclones, it's a bucket load of water that we have to then spill. We can't actually use that for generation. And it's cutting off communities when when access, other infrastructure is all affected by it. And when we look at these challenges, the thing that Powerco has got at the back of the mind is, and I've mentioned it in other chats, is you can't keep doing what you have done. You can't just go and build more. You can't just replace what was there, because it's unsustainable and unaffordable at the end. So those are some of the challenges. The other one, which is new to us, but we're very wary of, so Australia has a big wildfire risk. That hasn't been much of an issue in New Zealand, but we are wary from what we're seeing with the drier seasons. And we've also had with the emergence of carbon forestry. So where there would typically be commercial forestry that would be harvested around the network, we'd have plans for it. They're now forests that are left there in poor state, basically just to fall over. And our network is about this big compared to trees that are that big. So it presents a new risk. And how do we all approach that from non-conventional methods?
It's great to hear. And like I mentioned, Powerco, we're supporting a lot of different initiatives out there. And so I think over time in our journey, we'll be incorporating some of these specific things. I think the carbon, what do you call it? Carbon farming? Is that what you refer to it as?
Carbon farming. Yeah,
Yeah.
So basically, yeah.
That's pretty interesting and different, right? Where you're saying that before that vegetation would have been maintained if it was for forestry or anything like that, and now it's kind of becoming a risk to you. So that might be an area of higher interest to understand. Is there a risk to your network there?
And something that we're doing with AiDASH in this is conventionally we trade off investments one for the other. So do we build a line? Do we do underground? Do we put in generation, some embedded generation? But now we can actually trade off the vegetation problem as well as a network investment. So what's the best goal or combination of approaches we should take?
Awesome. Orlando, I know this is a very timely topic, as even during our summer, we experienced firsthand as AiDASH as well, kind of supporting you and figuring out how to also be agile and quite directly with some of these issues. So I would love for you to tell the audience about that.
Indeed, indeed. This year, we had a Hurricane Beryl. Hurricane Beryl affected us July 3rd. So we should have had our weekly meetings with Isabella. So we had to be postponing those because we were in the middle of restoration. Geographically, we are right in the path of the hurricane. So we have been blessed over the years to avoid some of the stronger, intense hurricanes, but this year we didn't fare so well. So Hurricane Beryl hit us, well, just went south of us as a Category 4 hurricane and did substantial damage to the southern part of our coast. So that's a challenge that we do have, but outside of the hurricanes, we do have our tropical storms, etc. So some of the challenges that I'm hearing here are similar across the various different utilities. We do have also challenges with the growth rate as well. I mean, we do have our drought season. So prior to this, several years ago, we would have had long dry spells. And what this does for us now is give us a false sense of security, because when your vegetation is not growing as fast and your outages may not be as frequent, you think that you're probably doing a good job, but the truth is you're not. So once the rainfall pattern changes and so forth, it gives us these fluctuations in terms of our performance and our sense of accomplishment. But primarily the major challenge for us is the hurricanes and where we are. And as mentioned before, it's a little bit more difficult for us in terms of response, because as an island state, it's harder for us to get that support, whether from overseas. That's something that we started developing this year. In getting some support, and we look to kind of expand that going forward. So that's primarily the main challenge that we have.
And I want to point out on something Orlando said, which is over the summer we did have to pause our meetings, which was, for good reason, but in that time we were really internally at AiDASH thinking about, this is likely not the first, it's not going to be the last, and it will be affecting other customers. So what is the way that we can still be supportive and help aid in your resilience? So a lot of the work we're doing is actually supporting you guys as thinking about next year's trim cycle, and how do we turn around our results as quickly as possible so that their team has the most time to actually get out in the field and do the trim work before hurricane season starts. Keeping in mind that hurricane season is quite long and it's potentially going to be extending, so that window of opportunity to be super quick is getting even shorter. So I've been partnering very closely with his team on figuring out how we do that and how we can get those results in your hand as quickly as possible for planning. So I think that's a really big challenge, but also a really interesting one, and one that I'm sure other folks out here will eventually also probably need support with. So thank you, Orlando. The next question, I actually want to go back to Ryan, because as our longest customer on the stage right now, and of all of our customers, you've seen a lot of really cool benefits and progress through your partnership with AiDASH and IBMS. So I would love for you to tell us about some of those, and I know there's some impressive stats, so if you don't say them, I will. So I would really like for you to tell the audience about the different versions of success that you've seen, and a little bit about what that's meant for you and National Grid.
Sure. So when this started out, it all began because we were seeing a huge increase in our maintenance costs across our distribution system. Our prices jumped up almost 20% from one year to the next, and that trend has only continued. I think over the last 8 years, our average cost per mile is up about 65%. The last couple years, it's been a little bit more steady, so that's been helpful, but it all originated out of those rising costs and us recognizing we needed to do something different. And through our partnership with AiDASH, using satellite imagery and data to help us design our annual maintenance plans, we're, instead of being on that fixed 5-year cycle that we were on, taking this condition-based approach and targeting the right circuits each year. Right now, we're not doing significantly more miles than we were on a typical 5-year cycle. So the huge difference is the which circuits we're doing.
Right.
And so taking this condition-based approach, over the last 2 full years, we've seen on the circuits that we've pruned, we've seen a 30% reduction in tree events, a 38% reduction in tree-related customers interrupted, and a 55% reduction in customer minutes interrupted. So that's the year after work was completed compared to a 3-year average prior to pruning as our baseline. There needs to be a little bit more context into those numbers. For starters, it's only 2 years compared to the rest of the statistics. We went back to 2008. And going back, I got ahead of myself a little bit. Going back prior to taking the condition-based approach, we hadn't seen any significant improvement in the number of tree-related events or customer minutes interrupted in the year after pruning. We had seen about an 11% decrease in the number of customers interrupted, but everything else was kind of flat. So those reductions compared to our previous time-based approach are huge.
Yeah.
But a little context around that, it is only 2 years compared to about 15 years worth of data, so small sample size. In addition to that, 2020 for us in Massachusetts, reliability was brutal. Our number of tree-related interruptions, customer minutes interrupted, they were huge, well above what we ever see in any other year. So that is a part of that baseline that we're comparing to.
Right.
And so we don't want to, I'm not expecting these huge results to continue for years and years, but they're very significant, and it's a great sign of things to come that we are on the right track.
Awesome. Thank you, Ryan. I was hoping you'd bring up those specific stats. Those are the ones I had in mind, so thank you for sharing. One other kind of area I would want us to think about as a group, and I have one example in mind that I'll bring up if no one else does, but how does your regulator or the community or your governing bodies, outside stakeholders view this adoption of technology? And Ryan, I think for you, you've had some more time to have that around, but I'm curious also, Carl in Orlando, has this, been either spurred or been positively received by those external stakeholders outside of just your customers? And Carl, I have a specific example if you want to go first, but if not.
I'll go second. I'll hand over to
Orlando, go ahead.
All right, so I'll be short. So we're actually implementing our pilot now, so we really haven't expanded it out to our regulators and our customers as yet. But what I've seen so far is a general interest and support in terms of the use of technology to improve the program. As I mentioned earlier, vegetation is one of our primary drivers. So anything that we can actually do to make any significant changes is well supported. My background also is partly in terms of modernizing the way we do business. So for me, it's a big opportunity. I'm pretty excited about it. But generally, the response that we have gotten from our stakeholders internally so far has been pretty good.
Carl, are you ready for us?
So I think for us, again, still really early days on the journey. Powerco in general is very open and understands the importance of data, but not data for data's sake. It's the right data for the right purpose. And also being able to tell the comprehensive story behind that, that is justifiable. We always in the stage of whenever we develop plans, communicate risks, it's all historic based, and with things changing so much, we're always on the back foot. We can't actually anticipate, we can't justify why we're not doing certain things, which in this day and age is as important as saying why you are doing something else. And really, the insights that we've got from the trial and showing what is possible and how different strategies, different approaches can influence things, it gives us the ability to have those longer term discussions with regulators, because we're looking to build out 5-10-year plans, the same as we do our asset management plans. Communicate the risks, what happens if we don't do that, but also then work with the communities or commercial forestry, which is a big headache for us, to show the impact that they're having and what the likely impact is so that they can also develop plans to help us. If that answers your question.
It does, it does. And Ryan, do you have any thoughts on this? Or I know that you all have certain goals you have to reach in certain timelines, and in terms of like your safety and SAIDI and things like that. Has including AiDASH into your plans and the way you operate, has that helped you at all when you have to, do anything that involves either, building a rate case or perhaps just having conversations about, the challenges you're facing?
Yeah, I think it's been a huge help. I think always when you have more data to support what you're doing and why you're doing it, it's always helpful, and it helps tell that story. So you mentioned the rate case. We just completed a rate case in Massachusetts, and it was a very successful order. We're very happy with the outcome. And so we had presented what we were doing, explaining how we were using satellite imagery and all the data analytics to help us develop our annual work plans, and explaining that cycles would vary from about 4 to 7 years throughout the state. And the regulators, they seemed very happy with that. And it's a difference from another utility in the state who, in their rate order, had been ordered to maintain at least a 5-year cycle throughout Massachusetts. So having this tool, this additional data, to make our case of why this is we feel this is the best approach to managing our distribution system, it was extremely helpful.
That's awesome. I want to leave some time for questions, so I'm going to ask one more question before we turn to the audience. So audience, I hope you have your questions ready to go, because I know these folks are excited to answer them. When you think about the future, and this one, any of you can take it, what do you most look forward to, and what do you think is going to be, the biggest part that's going to change as you adopt more of these AI-powered and satellite-informed technologies into your day-to-day operations, basically? Ryan, you've kind of already seen a little bit of that, so we'll save you for last. But Orlando, maybe we'll start with you this time.
Yeah, no problem. I'll share a little story. Thiago knows it well. We have been working with AiDASH with the IVMS solution, and having seen the results of it, I'll lean a little bit in terms of what Ryan mentioned. It's very powerful. I was able to use just the preliminary outputs out of that to have a more in-depth conversation in terms of our CFO, our strategy department for funding. Because for the first time, I could say that if you give me X amount of money, I can do this amount of vegetation. I can give you a more forecasted result where we are. When I started seeing the information that was coming back from AiDASH, I was pretty impressed. And I started to think a little bit beyond what I was seeing, to say, if I could get this type of information for my vegetation, what would it mean if I could get this from a pole line infrastructure? So I went off somewhere in my brain thinking, this is a great idea, until I came here about yesterday, and I was actually looking at the monitor to realize that there's actually a solution being created by AiDASH for that, for the same application. So I was saying to Thiago that, boy, Thiago, I thought I was really on the cutting edge, but surely I am behind. So the point I'm making is that the future, in terms of where we're going, is really going to be defined by us. And I think the role that AiDASH has played now in terms of partnering with the stakeholders, the subject matter experts, in terms of defining what the problems are and creating solutions to address that, I believe that is the way we will get to the future and to the right future that we need to get to. The second point I'd want to make also is the fact that I see more, as Carl mentioned before, we have a lot of data. As utilities, we do have a lot of data. But what challenges us many times is the analysis, getting through that data. How do I get the information out of that so I can actually make the decisions? What I'm seeing AiDASH do and what I believe is required in the future is for us to have that level of automation, whether through AI or other means, to ensure that we have that information so we can make the decisions very, very quickly. So the future to me is not necessarily data collection, but actually data processing and agility to make quick decisions and respond to the problems that are affecting us the most.
Yeah. And I just want to say that Orlando's team is amazing to partner with because, you know, one of his main reports who works with me we talk almost daily. She is really a very product forward thinker. And so she's always bringing me incredible feedback and insights from using both the mobile and the web application. And I know that several of the features that are in our upcoming release in 2.6 and in the version 2.5 are directly from the JPSCo feedback team because they are so incredible at using it and synthesizing that feedback and really giving incredible ideas for where we can go next. So I know that, you know, another big topic in Jamaica is your herbicide use, and it's a very unique one because of some of these fast-growing species, the bamboo he mentioned. So a lot of the feedback we've gotten from them is part of, and part other customers as well, some of the features that were talked about earlier today in our 2.6 version that will allow customers to log different types of work that they're doing. And that, in part, is from that need for, you know, apart from other things, being able to log herbicide work just as you do trimming work, because for them it's a very complementary part of their vegetation management strategy. So I wanted to highlight that it's you also helping us build the future that will work for you and for many other customers. So thanks to your team.
Thank you. And I'll relate that to Avia. Thank you.
Carl, any thoughts?
What I just heard now excites me because we also have a spray program. So that would be great. So you can get it working and we'll just run with it afterwards. I think much what Orlando has said is we're used to having a whole lot of programs and data and information, but by the time we get to analyze it, use it, and understand how we should have used it, 4 years have passed, so it's quite irrelevant. And really, the exciting part for this, when we're looking at reliability and resilience, I know majority of this is all about vegetation, but that's a component of network resilience, asset performance, and everything. So being able to quickly gain insights into all of that, to make decisions and help with forward planning with relevant data, relevant information, current status, gives you this ability to be quite dynamic, within barriers, obviously. But with that also comes a little bit of hesitation always is, if you don't have the right culture or the right skills as you're bringing this along with you, you lose the insights, the human insights to interpret what it's telling you. You know, it's the same as if you write something into ChatGPT and you go and verbatim say it. So quite important is whatever journey we go on with this is to make sure the fundamental skills, the engineering, the arborist skills is all taken with and promoted.
Brian, any thoughts or final thoughts before we turn to the audience for questions?
Sure. I mean, I think advancements in technology, they're always exciting, and there's always something new. Thinking about the future and more accurate satellite imagery will be coming soon. It will allow us to do more things, identify dead trees, diseased trees eventually, to help us target different areas of our system where it can identify additional work for us to do to allow us to respond to issues faster before they become a huge problem. So yeah, I think it's all very exciting to see where everything's going to go.
Awesome.
Something on Ryan's comments there, if you can tell me where I've got bug infestation in cross-arms, I would be super excited.
Well, someone's out here taking notes, I'm sure, from our team. Great. So if there are any audience questions, we'd love to leave a few minutes for that. And Henry can bring the mic to you. So any questions from the audience?
When's the best time to go to Jamaica?
Anytime.
Bert, you don't want to put Ryan on the spot? What a kind coworker here. All right, well, that's okay. We have our final then question for me, which is, as you look ahead, how do you want your organizations to play a role in that future? And Carl, we can start with you, since I think you've gotten to go last a few times now.
Again, when we're talking about resilience, it's being able to anticipate, withstand, and recover quickly. But I think quite importantly is to learn quickly from everything, much what AiDASH is built on as well. But it can't be done alone, so it's really cross-collaboration with cross-sector. And I mean, we've got quite good examples of investing in what we call hybrid power supplies for community centers and really remote parts of the country. Working with our emergency services and that, it's not just they'll be without electricity for a while, but you know, you've got no comms, you've got no food, you've got no water. So rolling out and being able to do programs like that and leading those discussions and consolidating, coordinating efforts, I think is where Powerco has a role to play in New Zealand, but I think utilities in general.
Orlando?
Our role, maybe because it's fresh in my memory, still scarred by the hurricane this year. But I believe that from the hurricane, we actually have been working more with our stakeholders. One of the things that we have learned really is the use of our incident command structure. It's something that was pretty new to us, which was introduced within the hurricane. So we see that as an opportunity also to work greater with our stakeholders locally. And right now through AiDASH, we're looking at opportunities also to help to develop the solution. With some of the specific scenarios that we have in Jamaica, I think that is something that we can volunteer, our experience to help develop solutions that could be spread across various different geographies.
Yeah, and I know that tropical geography is present in a lot of different countries, in the surrounding areas, but also in other parts of the world. So we do view Jamaica Public Service Company as a great partner, and you guys have very deep expertise in managing a lot of that. So it is very lucky to have you guys.
Thank you.
I think building on Orlando's point there as well is because all utilities face similar, and I'm talking countrywide, even the little one at the bottom of the map that everyone forgets, but we all have a part to play in developing the solutions that are transferable, and learning from each other really prevents that wheel of let's start at the beginning. And within New Zealand, we're getting that strong community between 29 distributors to try and sort that out. But internationally, it'll be quicker.
Ryan? I think you guys are already leading the way, but...
Building on that, like you said at the beginning of the talk, we were one of AiDASH's first customers. National Grid, I believe, was the first utility in North America to take this condition-based approach using the satellite imagery and the data on its entire distribution system for their maintenance program. So wanting to continue to be a leader in adapting to change, developing new strategies, and dealing with climate change, and continuing to work with people from other utilities who are dealing with similar issues, and all of us having opportunities like this to come and talk and learn from each other. I think it's fantastic.
Awesome. Well, that's my final question for our panelists. First, can we give a round of applause for them? They did a great job. And I really want to thank you guys for sharing your insights today. I think these experiences are unique to you guys, but at the core, very similar to what a lot of other people face. I think it's great to have you all here and sharing how you've been incredible partners and how you've gained already a lot, even if you're still in the early stages. And so, you know, IVMS and our other products are truly adaptable solutions, and our product consultants, we've got a big team of top-tier product consultants who are excited to partner with incredible utilities and help them solve their problems in the best way possible. And so for our audience, I hope that you've gathered some takeaways here on how you can enhance your own operations by leveraging these advanced AI-driven solutions, whether it's improving reliability or optimizing your veg management or boosting sustainability or getting ready for a hurricane or a storm or whatever it might be. I hope these stories help you see the value that AiDASH can bring to you. And if you have any questions about anything we talked about today or the other work that I and other product consultants do with our customers, feel free to come find me after this. But thank you all.
Thank you.